And the one thing I did have, as I explained last time, was I had adoption paper notes, and my birth mother was 13 when she got pregnant. And my birth father, according to the adoption notes, there was a car accident and he was murdered at the site of the car accident. So he was dead. And that's all I knew. And I joined 23andMe like 12 years ago, and I got, whatever, fourth cousin hit. We're probably like third cousins or something. It's like everyone's a fourth cousin, fifth cousin. It's sort of meaningless and nothing really close. And then I was on actually a walk in England 3 years ago now. 3 years ago with Kevin and everyone. I was like, yeah, I did 23andMe. And they're like, oh, dude, you got to do Ancestry. That's where everyone is. And I was like, really? I was like, all right. I came back, did Ancestry, and lo and behold, boom, there's my mom. And it was like, oh, okay, I guess, yeah, people are on Ancestry. So I get a name. I was mainly interested just in genetic history and health history. You crest 40, and if you have things you want to live for, you start thinking about health. Mm-hmm. It's just whatever. Stuff just starts popping up. And my relationship with my stepdaughter became so profound to me in the last 5 years and gave me such a strong sense of self-worth. All of this other stuff was ratcheting up. Like I talked about, this sense of scarcity, this lack of myself having value that I felt all through my 20s. And if there's one thing that supercharged all of it, of abundance and value, self-value, it was the relationship with my stepdaughter. And particularly when she was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And working through conflicts with her, not big conflicts, just weird little things. We'd get in these little fights. She wouldn't get up to go to school. I'd like squirt her with a water bottle, and then she wouldn't like talk to me for 3 weeks. And that stuff, it's just like, whatever, little girls could be kind of insane sometimes. And like, I was driven to such places of sadness by that because I had never seen reconciliation. I'd never had that modeled for me. And I thought, this little girl is going to throw me away, because that was my default for all of my relationships in my life. This person can throw me away. And what I realized was, not only does she not want to throw me away, she really wants to reconcile. She really wants to repair things. And she desperately, desperately wants even more of me in her life. And once we went through a few cycles of like, she kind of got upset at me for something dumb or whatever. She was acting up or whatever. And I took away her iPad or something. And once we went through a few cycles of that, I realized how much of a great dad I could be. And that was something I never believed because I'd never had it modeled for me. And so this is an important thing to queue up meeting, connecting with my birth mom, because by the time we matched on Ancestry, I had gone through so many, I think, iterations of self. And the self I was when we connected, when we matched, I was really proud of. And I felt really good about, and I believed in my value. I had like empirical evidence of it. And I was anonymous on Ancestry because I'm protective of a lot of stuff. Even though I'm like being quite open here, I'm also quite protective as you are to a certain degree, as we all are. And so she couldn't see my name. And we matched, and then we didn't send each other a message for a year. And I was just like, oh, okay, she doesn't want to match. Maybe her family made her join. She has a traumatic experience. In my mind, it was like being pregnant with me was tremendously traumatic. And I was like, okay, I don't want to rustle her feathers. I don't want to disrupt her life. I had her name. I found out everything about her. I could just like Google, you get all the records. I knew where she worked. I knew where she lived. I had her home address. I knew who she was married to. I knew she had been divorced. All this stuff. I could see that. And I was like, okay, cool. I just kind of know who this person is. I don't feel the need to meet her. I don't feel this need for like a mom. I have my mom. I don't need another mom. There was none of that. And then a year later, she sent me a little message that just said, hi, with like no punctuation. It was like, hi, I think we're related. Do you live in Japan? It was like the weirdest message. And it was like, you think we're related? We share 50% of DNA. Like, we're definitely related. And it triggered this thing in me where I was like, I grew up with not having a lot of adults be adults around me. And she sent this message, and it just made me feel like, okay, here's another adult who doesn't want to do the hard emotional work of being the adult, of being a parent in this situation, and being like, hey, I'm your mom. This is great to match. I joined because of these reasons. Would you like to connect? Da, da, da. Instead, it's this weird, cryptic, bizarro message. So I didn't respond for 3 months. And then I finally, after stewing on it for a while, I was like, okay, what would I want to get if I was her? who I had this kid when I was, 13, 14. And so I wrote her this message that I stayed anonymous in. I just kind of outlined my life. I was like, look, not everything has been easy, but I've gotten to this place and I've been really lucky and I've been really blessed in a lot of ways. And I have this amazing relationship with this young daughter. And I've been successful in many ways. And like, I'm so grateful. And I can only imagine how hard it was for you to have done what you did, and thank you for having me. And thank you for going through the process of putting me up for adoption. Basically, like, to assuage any sense of worry about who I might be or what had happened to me, to give her that gift. And so I sent her that message, and I'm still anonymous, and I get no response from her. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, this is like a lost cause. Mm-hmm. And then 3 months after that, I get this message, and it's like, oh my God, I don't have notifications turned on for Ancestry. I am so sorry. And it's a 5,000 word letter that is the most emotionally intelligent, beautiful, thoughtful thing I'd ever gotten. Mm. And it was just like, this person is so tuned in. And I was just like, what do I do with this? And I was like so overwhelmed. I was launching my fine art edition of T-Bot and like things become other things and doing all this. I was like, oh my God, how do I process this? And then a week later, she sends me another 5,000 word letter. And she's like, I'm so crushed that I didn't respond to your other message. And like, I just want to tell you about my childhood. I want to tell you about where you came from. I want to tell you about the family you come from. And like, I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, and my father died when I was 9. And so like, I had to work at a sandwich shop when I was 13, and I was super entrepreneurial. We had pet turtles, and I had 3 goldfish and 6 cats and this thing and that thing. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't process it. I wasn't ready for someone to be so hungry. And she was just like, I know you may not want to meet, but I am happy to talk on whatever terms you want to talk on. Here's my address. Here's my phone number. Here's my email. And I was just like, I couldn't process it. I had so much going on in my life. And I sent her a little message at the end of the year, still anonymous. I just said, hey, look, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm going to get back to you in the new year. And she's like, no worries. Don't worry. I didn't respond. Mother's Day comes. She sends me a letter. I'm thinking about you on Mother's Day. Like, I hope you're with your adoptive mom, and I hope she's giving you a big, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, now I'm a terrible son to like 2 moms, and like, I haven't even met this person. And finally, I'm with Kevin. We're on a walk. We're in Bali. I'm talking about this. And Kevin just goes, Craig, just go have lunch with her. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, screw it. All right. I messaged her, still anonymous. I said, hey, how about we get lunch in August? I'll be in Chicago. I'll meet you out there. She lives in Chicago. And she was like, great, let's do it this day, this time, blah, blah, blah. We set it up. I'm still anonymous. I still haven't told her my name. I'm like, I don't want her to Google. I don't want her to know anything. I fly out to Chicago, pretty nervous. Don't know what to expect, but also I'm not going into this needing something. I'm not like, oh, I need her to be this. I need this relationship. I'm just like, this is kind of a fun adventure. Let's go meet this person. She's standing outside this steakhouse that she booked for lunch. And I see her and I like, I'm like, hi, I'm the anonymous weirdo that I'm like, I apologize for not like telling her my name before we met. And I give her a big hug, and we go into this steakhouse and sit down. And it takes us 2 hours before we order drinks. We sat down in this booth. The waitress came over and was just like, honeys, you've got something going on. I'll come back when you're ready. And she goes, I've been thinking about you every day on your birthday. And she pulls out of her wallet a baby photo of me that the adoption agency had given her. And she goes, I've been carrying around this my whole life. And she goes, I have thought about you every year. I've wondered who you've become. And I've never once felt bad. I have no negative feelings. I have no negative emotions around the experience. Actually, getting pregnant with you, it was this accident, but it was totally copacetic. And by the way, your father's still alive. I lied. She was 13. She's like, he was 22, and that was going to cause a bunch of problems. And so I just picked a guy out of the newspaper who had been murdered, and I said that was the father. I was like, oh my God. She was so strong-headed. She was just like, I was just going to handle this pregnancy on my own. But in the end, my sisters helped me out. And I moved out with my aunt and uncle in Connecticut. That's how you ended up in Connecticut. And everyone was so supportive, and it was so beautiful. And it was such a great experience. And the high school supported me, and they gave me like a mentor. And she's like, when I gave birth to you in the hospital, I held you I could only hold you for 2 days and I wrote you a letter. Did you get the letter I wrote? I was just like, oh my God. It's just, she's telling me all this. And my Genesis story is just being completely reconfigured in real time. And I don't know what to do with it. And she tells me her story. And she's just like, she's a computer programmer and she runs a consultancy and she's totally self-taught. And she's like, I bought my first car at 16, my second at 18, my first house when I was 24. I was just like, who are you? And we're sitting there and I just go, this is the first time ever in my life that I understand where my brain comes from. We have some features that it wasn't like looking into a mirror, but it was like listening to someone who had jacked into my brain talking about their life. I was like, this is where my brain comes from, because no one in my family has any of the impulses I have. No one I grew up with has any of these impulses. And it was just so clear, like how she handled everything in her life is exactly how I've handled everything in my life. It was so surreal. She goes, do you have friends in Chicago? And I go, yeah, I have friends. I'm going to have dinner with one tonight. And she goes, do you have dinner plans? And I was like, yeah, I thought we were just getting lunch. She's like, I got us tickets to the symphony. I got us a riverboat ride. We have pizza dinner. I was just like, oh my God. I'm like, obviously I'm going to cancel my plans. Like, of course, let's go to the symphony. And we ended up spending the whole day talking, going to the symphony, going to get pizza. It was so surreal. And at the end of it all, we were going to do more. And I just said, look, I need to be alone now. And she's like, I totally get it. And she gave me this little gift basket. And the whole time we hadn't cried, we hadn't gotten emotional. At the end of brunch on Sunday, she goes, I can't tell you how much this meant to me. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for meeting up. This means so much. And I hope this isn't the end of this relationship. And here's this gift basket. She's like, don't look at it now. It's embarrassing. And I opened it up later and it had like chocolate bars and Twizzlers. And it had this print on demand book of like my entire family tree and history and family photos and like my grandparents and, all of her brothers and sisters. And, this is who you come from. And this is like when they came to America. And it was just like, the whole thing was just so overwhelming and so moving. And I feel like the timing of it was so perfect because I could go to that meeting with her, not needing anything from it, to just be there in the moment, to be totally radically present, focused, and also just so like, I know this sounds weird to say, but proud of who I was, who I had become, to say hello to her, to meet her. And you just saw it in her as well. Like I was like, oh, I'm doing this thing. And this. She's like, I can't believe you're my son. She was just so proud. And it was obviously on Saturday night, she went back to the hotel Saturday night and she called everybody. She called her aunt and uncle who she stayed with when she gave birth to me. I started getting all these emails from cousins. I get this email from someone in like Wyoming. They're like, hey, I run a flower shop in Wyoming. I'm 33. I'm your cousin. Like, let's do a Zoom. I'm like, what? I've suddenly got all these aunts and uncles, all these cousins. I've got this whole family. And she was like, obviously so proud of like who I was and who I'd become. And I don't know, the whole thing has just been really, really cool. And it turns out that I also have a half sister who's 28. She lives in Alaska. We did a Zoom call like a month ago and she's awesome. She's so cool. She's married to this Coast Guard. They're going to come out and do a walk in Japan. I'm going to go to Alaska and go hunting. And I'm doing a book tour in America in May and June. They're going to fly out and join like one of the dates on the book tour. She's also an only child. I'm an only child. And we're both like, we love that we now have a sibling. We're like, this is so cool. Texting every day, sending stupid photos. It's a very weird, unexpected chapter of life that came out of nowhere. And I'm here for it. I'm ready for it. I'm excited by it.